living la vida low carb. This show is changing lives. We talking about your diet, trying to get you feeling right. Cut up them avocados, fry some eggs. Time to explore the longest running health podcast, hosted by Jimmy Moore. Time to give up the crappy garbage. We're getting into ketosis. Every day is a new step to your goal. Yeah, you're getting closer, motivated and focused. Don't stop, just go. Time to get inspiration from the Living La Vida Low Carb Show. Hey, the livinglowcarbshow.com.
There is, you guys, Sweta Kumar. She is the carnivore hippie over here on Instagram. Let me see. I had you up. There we are. The carnivore hippie. There you are. Go check her out. Look like she's live right now. Wow, who knew? It's so funny when it does that. But Sweta, thank you for being here today. What's going on?
Thank you. Oh my gosh. This is like something I never knew I would ever be doing.
Yeah, you've been a fan of my podcasts for a long time.
Years.
And full circle, here you are.
Years. And if you would have told me back in 2012 when I came across you, I would have never in my wildest dreams thought that this would be happening. And here we are.
Here we are. And man, what a story you have. I feel like we're seeing a lot more of this, Sweta, where people are coming out, so to speak, of sharing like amazing things they've overcome, because in the carnivore world, it's really not ever been about weight loss. Yeah, you'll lose some weight if you need to, but some of the remarkable turnarounds in health, to me, that's a lot more exciting than any weight loss.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I like how you said the coming out, because it was definitely a coming out process. I knew that in my community and in a private setting, it was very easy for me to share my journey and my story. But when we're talking about things like colitis, ulcerative colitis, it can be a shameful topic for a lot of us, at least for me, it was. So I feel like kind of coming out and taking this sort of being a face of what, so many people have ulcerative colitis, all different walks of life, and to say, hey, look, me too.
So for those of us that may not know what that is, or those that are watching and listening right now may not know what UC is, can you describe what it is symptomatically? How does it develop? What it is? Go.
Okay, so ulcerative colitis is basically, for me, it's in the descending colon. It gets very inflamed, and what ends up happening, it sends a signal to the brain saying it's full when it may not be full. So you are constantly running to the bathroom, and on top of the colitis, there's ulcer. So you can only imagine what it looks like going to the bathroom. It's mucus and blood, and it just constantly, towards the end for me, I couldn't even go anywhere.
Wow, that sounds even worse than like IBS or IBD. Those are already bad, but this is like to a whole nother level.
Mm-hmm. Yep, they told me that I would not have the way that I was going when I was diagnosed. They told me that by the time I was 40, I would probably already have had to have my colon removed and have a bag, and that I most likely wouldn't be able to have kids. I mean, the whole 9 yards. And here we are, completely none of that.
Wow. Is it autoimmune?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's an autoimmune
Of the colon?
Of the colon. The entire, so usually the ending colon is usually people experience it, but it can be, more than.
So all autoimmune, it generally starts with gut health and some kind of dysbiosis there, and then that leads to leaky gut, which then these things float around inside the body that kind of make it look like they're foreign invaders, and it's actually your own healthy tissue, and then attack.
Absolutely. A complete attack. Your body is completely confused. And for me, I believe that for me, I think it started with trauma and all of the stuff that I went through emotionally. Then that had a significant impact. I mean, I remember as a child, I would get these pains in my stomach, these feelings, and I would just like punch my tummy to make them go away. It was like an energy, a ball of tight energy. And I think from there and all the experiences that we have in life, I started to turn to different types of foods and drugs and alcohol for comfort. And what I needed to be doing is fixing up here so that it could, you know, the gut brain connection, that whole thing is definitely, I am a living proof of that truth. So I think that is when I started to turn to all of these different substances that then I abused my body with the diets and the eating disorders. And I mean, I was taking, if someone told me to take pepper, like cayenne pepper, I was eating gobs of cayenne pepper with nothing, just going straight into my system. So I did a lot of damage, I think, rather quickly.
Well, and your story is not uncommon, that there are certain personality types or something in our heads that make us, when we go in, we go way into the extreme. And it could be a trauma response. You mentioned you had trauma, and I was going to say that is an unspoken reason why autoimmune diseases develop, why obesity and other kind of chronic health conditions happen. There actually was a study that ties these adverse childhood events, they call them ACEs, to our health as adults. And so I'm hoping that becomes more mainstream as people realize, okay, it's not just a moral issue of you are a bad person and you eat bad foods and therefore you deserve what you get. It's more of, whoa, look at the shiz you went through as a kid, which now you've carried into adulthood, not just mentally and emotionally, but now physically as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, it manifested where, I mean, I'll never forget my doctor in 2007. He said to me, we have to reduce your stress. And he like handed me a book and he said, we've got to start meditating. We've got to start, you know, going into therapy, start looking at some of this stuff to undo what's going on up here. So you're not so, the anxiety that you're carrying in your belly is creating so much tension and stress that you are going to continue to have ulcers.
Yes. Well, and Natasha Campbell McBride did the GAPS diet. She talks all about how the strangeness happening in the gut is going to mess with your brain. How could it not? The intricate tie between our gut health and our brain health, I don't think people know about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, you know, even just looking back to the foods that I was eating in my childhood years too. I mean, we're talking, you know, late 80s into the 90s were, you know, high processed. This is what we thought was healthy. You know, these crackling brand cereals that we were allowed to eat because it was brand, you know? And so that was just aggravating already what was going on with me.
Right. Frosted mini wheats, when those came out, like Mama would let us have those because she thought they were healthy. Never mind, they had all the grains and then the sugar slapped on top of it. But they were frosted mini wheats, so they were really popular and, quote, healthy when they weren't.
Yeah. Yep. I was eating all stuff. And then I remember like just completely restricting. And then when I did eat, it was like cracker. So then in high school, I went through the whole eating disorder, and it was just like carbohydrates without, you know, because sugar. I remember specifically, I remember the day looking at a nutrition label on sugar, on the package of the Domino sugar, and it said 0 calories. I was like, well, hey, I can eat this and eat this. And I could not for the life of me understand. I mean, yeast, pimples, I was just all over the place. And I just couldn't understand why I wasn't losing the weight. And I was just eating like honey or sugar or whatever was.
Right. Well, they get you on the labels because they make the portion sizes so obscenely low. Nobody has a half a teaspoon of sugar as a serving size. You know, if you're making sweet tea here in the South, you're loading that bad boy up with lots of sugar, so thick you could pour it over your pancakes, that iced tea. And so Yeah, that's part of the issue as well, and people getting not just over caloried, but just over sugared and over carbohydrated. I just made up a word, over carbohydrated, uh, hydrogenated carbohydrates. And so, anyway, yeah, this is such a fascinating story of yours. And would you mind saying what the trauma was when you were a kid?
So I basically, when I was little, when I moved here from Australia, I was like, I'm from Nepal. I'm from Kathmandu, Nepal, and everywhere we went, I was like the oddball. So I was bullied like you wouldn't believe. I was beat up. I was thrown into like ditches and just totally, I mean, the bullying was out of control. I didn't have friends. I finally made one friend in third grade. I was overweight. You know, it was difficult. I had an Australian accent because I lived in Australia and then I moved here. And I was just different. There was nobody in our town that was from Nepal at the time. And so there was just all these differences. And I just got picked on for them all the time. So, in extreme bullying, kicked on the butt. I mean, extreme bullying. So,
Real Good Foods is one of the fastest growing frozen food companies in the U.S. Everything they make is nutrient dense, high in protein, low in carbs, and made from real food ingredients. They make food for every occasion: breakfast sandwiches, poppers, enchiladas, entrees, and pizza. So whether you're on a keto diet, trying to cut back on your carbs, or just trying to eat healthier, they make super convenient and tasty options. RealGoodFoods.com and at Real Good Foods on social media.
Yeah,
yeah.
I can definitely relate to that. I was the fat kid. I was the awkward kid. I remember in middle school, many a times the kids on the playground was the worst. My
Mhm.
God, they would be like, "There's a cone over there. Go do something with it," and you can kind of fill in the blanks of what you think they told me to do. And if you didn't, you got beat up. And see that kind of pressure on top of any maybe craziness at home. Did you have at least a good home life?
Yeah, the my home life was good, but it was also very stressful because I felt like I was always living in a two separate worlds. Like my parents were born and raised in Kathmandu, Nepal. My dad comes from a village, like just the typical story of someone who made it out of a village to come to the US. And so when we would come home, it was like we were living in a whole different country. The cultural, like, it was like going from United States walking in to Nepal. That's what it felt like for me, at least. And of course, as we lived here long enough, my parents started to acclimate to the culture and everything, but it was difficult because we weren't able to do a lot of things that the other kids were allowed to do. So if, for instance, if a boy called the house, it like my dad's yelling on the phone, hanging up, like we had to kind of tiptoe around doing things, and it was just difficult. And my parents are incredible parents. They're amazing parents. I just think they were doing what they were taught to do,
Yeah.
which made that's really and I say that because it was a big part of my anxiety, being scared to come home and not having good grades and not,
Sure.
fitting this mold of South Asian Americans. We come here, you can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer, you can be an engineer, and I didn't want any of those things.
Yeah, I can't imagine the pressure. And that's interesting. The cultural norm at home was like it was in the other country. So that is definitely a stressor, along with the bullying at school. And so, when did you first start noticing health issues popping up?
So the first thing I noticed was it kind of starts with my alcoholism. My parents at one point just finally stopped like trying, and I remember sitting in the car that day and thinking, maybe something's wrong here, or maybe
How
something's wrong. I
how
was
old
about
how old were you when this was happening? How old?
17, 18 years old, something like that.
Okay.
And didn't pay much attention to it. I continued on. I went to university for a little bit, wasn't feeling it, joined the Marine Corps, and moved away from home. This is when I really started to notice all the health issues. So I started having serious, like, the eating disorder went out of control when I left home. So did all the drinking and all of the things. But I started having gut pains, and just like nothing that was, it was like coming slowly, like coming on slowly. And then towards the end of my Marine Corps career, I started noticing blood in the stool. I started noticing extreme gut pain. And by the time I got out of the Marines, that's when it was really bad. It was so bad that I couldn't even stand up straight. And
Wow.
then that 5, I went through misdiagnoses for about a year. And then in end of 2006, I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. And then from there, I kind of fell off, went into the deep end and hit a bottom. And then March 16th, 2007, I finally got sober. And that's when I started to get better.
So coming off the alcohol was a big part of your initial part of your journey to healing.
Mm-hmm.
After becoming sober, and I assume stayed sober all those years since, I know you did because we've talked before, but what else did you see out there that could maybe help? Because obviously the ulcerative colitis stuck around a little bit, and some other issues that manifested, that then the eating disorder started happening. Tell us a little more of the journey after you got sober.
So the first thing is I got diagnosed, and then the doc was like, told me that it was severe and that I had to take 9 pills a day. And I was like, there's gotta be something. So I was taking the 9 pills a day, and it really wasn't until, so I get sober, I meet this doctor, and there is not, and he says to me, really, I mean, you can try diet. I was like, there's got to be something I can do to change what I'm eating. And he said, you can try that, but we need to reduce your stress. I don't really think diet's going to be a big thing here. And so I was like, no, I'm going to show you. I'm going to be your first patient, I said to him, that's going to heal themselves. And this was back in 2007. And so I started researching and looking into things first with meditation. And through the process of meditation, I realized I had like bottom of the barrel sugar addiction. Like I always compare it to drugs because I've done drugs before. I know what that looks like. I know what it feels like to be running to look for a certain substance. And this was like that. Once I finally got help for the sugar is when my diet changed. Processed foods came out, sugar came out, carbs started coming out, and I transitioned. Now this is like 2008. I transitioned into sort of the low carb thing, and that's when I noticed I was able to have time off of medication. I was able to kind of have little moments off of medication. So it wasn't until I put down the refined sugar was the biggest one. Now I had relapses on sugar since that point, up until about 2011. But once that was down, things changed big time in my gut.
Well, and we know the science of addiction is when you're addicted to one thing, the propensity to be addicted to other things, it's in the same part of the brain. And so addiction to alcohol, which you had and overcame, then got replaced, it sounds like, with an addiction to sugar that then you had to deal with as well. So it's fascinating when it's kind of like whack-a-mole. You knocked one down and another one pops up. You knock that one down, another one pops up. And so good for you identifying it. And I love your journey so far, by the way, because it's so indicative of the methodicalness that it takes. People say, well, I need to just heal of everything so I can move on with my life. And it doesn't work that way. You heal this, then you heal this, then you're like, oh, wow, let me try this, and oh, wow, I feel even better. Oh, I regress doing this. And so that's a part of the journey. People think, for example, eat a carnivore diet, everything gets better. Sometimes you have to add in things, take things away, and find that plan that's going to work for you.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. And I actually think that my sugar addiction was my first addiction.
Yes.
And I found alcohol. And it's interesting, alcohol and sugar kind of, alcohol turns to sugar. I actually can have blacked out from sugar before, even where I don't remember anything when I eat too much of it. But I agree with you. My journey here, first of all, the last thing I wanted in 2007 was I thought I was going to be a vegetarian. This carnivore, what? My doc said, looks like you're going to be taking a lot of veggies out my GI doctor, along this process here, because more veggies, fruit were already gone. And I just went to my car and I just sobbed because I thought in order for me to be connected to this world, I would have to be a vegetarian. I mean, that's what my family does. That's what a lot of my people in my family, is just what was kind of culturally there. And so going through that, so I didn't want to this was a slow, natural progression based off, like you said, healing one thing and finding out, oh, that many raw vegetables in 2 weeks. Not only did I gain 20 pounds from eating cantaloupes every single day for 2 weeks, I was so sick, it doesn't work for me. But when I eat beef, of all the things, I thrive. And beef, the cow in my country, is you don't eat, they roam free. So, transition here, it's very, very slow, and one thing at a time, absolutely.
I got to ask you, when you started eating the beef and you felt better versus eating the vegetables with that mindset of, oh, I've got to be a vegetarian, how did that make you feel? I want to know what went on in your head, because that had to be kind of an aha moment, but you didn't want to admit it probably at first. Oh my gosh, this cow can't be giving me nutrition, and then this thing from the earth, which is supposed to be the bee's knees of all diets, that's hurting me. Like, that had to mess with your brain a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. For me, you mentioned being in the closet. I think I was a closet carnivore in the beginning, the first few months. Not just that, at least luckily in my family, nobody gives me anything for eating beef. They don't really care. But I definitely felt like, because of, the stigma around it with the cholesterol and all of that, that was what I was more afraid of telling people about, because my heart disease runs rampant in my family, and my dad's side rampant, and so this is going to be a problem if I'm eating this much beef. In fact, they ask me, how's your cholesterol? I tell them good, because you know what, it is good. It is, according to my body and what my body needs, it's good. You know what I mean? According to what other people might think, it would not be good probably for them. But for me, it's good. And so I just had to really come to terms with, this is where I ended up, and use that whole practice of authenticity, and look, I'm thriving, and this is where I am now. I'm completely open about it. But yeah, I went so back and forth there this year, January of this year. And look, I didn't start this account till April, and still then I was kind of I don't know, but here we are. Everybody knows it's all out. And I think that just allowing myself to know that I feel good. And I also, I have a dietary consultant now that I decided to invest in so I could really learn more. And I think that was key for me. Understanding my own metabolic panel.
Yes.
Me see that, you know what? I'm good. I'm good. I'm better than I've ever been. My last results came back. Even my primary care physician was like, yeah, this looks good. Everything looks good. Where 2 years ago, a lot of those numbers were looking not that great. Everything was good.
Are you tired of playing the mask game? Me too. That's why I wanted to tell you about the Unmask. This is a breathable, completely breathable. It covers, you can't even see that it's breathable, but it's
breathable. Whether you're going on a plane, having to go into a store and wearing this thing, playthemaskgame.com is how you can get this mask. They come in all kinds of colors and everything. In fact, right there, you can see right through it what it is, but when you're wearing it, it does not look like it's anything different, but it's breathable, baby. Playthemaskgame.com.
Yeah, and the goodness kind of evolves over time. And plus, it depends on your doctor. There's some doctors that see certain numbers on your cholesterol panel, for example, and they freak out.
Yeah.
And then you point out, but what about this one and this one? Talking about like triglycerides, maybe looking at like insulin level, maybe looking at inflammation levels. All of those kind of tell the tale of how you're doing in your health, and the numbers don't lie. So how are you doing today with the ulcerative colitis, the eating disorder? Would you say you're in remission from those things? Obviously with the propensity that they could pop back up at any moment, but do you feel confident that eating mostly animal-based foods has kind of helped heal that along with some of the other things you're doing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I have been in remission now from ulcerative colitis basically since I went keto, full keto in 2017. And then I started implementing intermittent fasting with that. Actually, I followed your journey with that whole long fast that you did too. I don't know, years back. But so I started implementing that, and in 2019, for the very first time, my colonoscopy came back absolutely pristine. They're like, what have you been doing? And I said, well, I do keto when I fast. They're like, well, whatever you're doing, keep doing that. And so since then, now, because of that, my doctors over at the VA, who know me very well for years, are 100% on board. They know what my numbers look like. They're very much on board of the ratios with the cholesterol. And so that's a really good thing. Whereas, you know, the doctors over at the insurance company over there, they're a little bit different because they don't know my history. But yeah, so anxiety, gone. The latest for me, talking about a slow progression, was I realized that stevia and monk fruit sweeteners were starting to become a problem for me. I know that's not for everybody. I used them for years on this journey. Those two, well, I don't know about monk fruit, but definitely like stevia and other type of natural sweeteners. And it just got to a point where I started noticing that there was kicking up a craving. So those two things just recently went down. I'm very, very active with my therapists, with my, my network, my recovery rooms, so that I can continue this lifestyle. But the craziest thing, I had a weird eye condition. I was poked in the eye back in 2006 so badly that I thought I went blind, and it never fully healed. And the flap when I would go to sleep at night, sometimes from the REM movement, it would open it up, and then it would be painful. So it was like in my dream, I was having this pain in my eye, and then when I wake up in the morning, I would have to wake up really slowly and open my left eye. I just noticed I've been now carnivore or animal-based, I should say, since the beginning of this year. And it's gone. It's completely gone. This is something that bothered me a couple times a week, more than a couple times a week. I would have to open my eyes slowly. If not, it would aggravate it, and then be a lot of pain, a lot of tears, and I would have to like walk around the house like this until it went away. Yeah. And it's gone. It's gone. That's the latest thing. That was like one of the last things that I was having a problem with. Inflammation is gone. My lower back pain are gone. My cramps from I used to get really bad cramps from that time of the month. Now I don't even know. I have to track it because I don't even know when it's coming because I don't have any of that. PTSD, I used to have panic attacks. Oh, Jimmy, like you wouldn't believe, in the closet, freaking out. Yep. Gone. Gone.
See, what you're demonstrating here, and thank you for sharing all those stories, especially the eye thing, that's pretty cool, is nutrition is powerful. I think we look at nutrition as eat better, okay, just eat better. And people don't really know what eat better means. And so for you, eat better wasn't eat more vegetables because that made you not better. eat better meant you needed more animal foods, and you saw better results. You're seeing better results. And I feel like we don't emphasize nutrition as a powerful modality like a drug. If people saw nutrition like a drug, then they would treat it more carefully and treat it more prescriptively of, I need to eat this way, for example, a carnivore diet, in order to heal my body, rather than, well, I gotta eat, so let me just randomly put foods in my mouth and okay, that was that. Rather than, maybe if I eat mostly just beef today and maybe a few eggs, and I eat that to nourish my body, that's actually a drug for my body to help heal it. Now, I kind of don't like that, but also like it at the same time. I don't like the idea of people thinking they need a drug, but that's the vernacular. We think that health comes in a pill and in a drug, so we could flip the script and say, you know what, your diet is a drug.
Right, right. And I think that if anything, the carnivore diet is a great, like, people do elimination diets all the time. I think it's a great, an animal-based sort of, let's say, strict carnivore diet. It just for a short period of time for people to heal their bodies. They don't have to care, I wasn't expecting to be doing this long, to be quite honest with you. I thought that I would slowly start to introduce some foods back in. And at this point, I feel so good. I'm just going to continue to do this year of lots of testing on my body and see how I do. And just kind of one day at a time, like I've done with sobriety and now sugar addiction, just one day at a time, continue to see how I thrive on this.
So Sweta, you call yourself the carnivore hippie, and you were like thrilled when I started following you. You're like, oh my God, Jimmy Moore's following me. And you didn't realize I was following you. I followed you for about a month before you realized it. And then you followed me and you're like, oh my gosh, he's following me. But it caught my attention. I still don't fully know what you mean by that. So why don't you elucidate?
Yeah, so I am a dirt worshiping, tree hugging, nature loving, meditation, peace and love kind of person. And, I'm a very spiritual, like I'm very into that whole sort of hippie concept. And so I chose this specifically because it feels like a lot of people think that when they hear hippie, they hear vegetarian, they hear, they hear veganism, they have a very specific idea. I wanted to show them that hippies can be nature-loving, primal beings, like eating meat. This is part of, if we were to go, my friend Austin Savage, then he does Combat Kitchen podcast, said to me once that he told his mom, hey mom, if I put you out in the woods, what would you go with that? And this is all we had. What would you go for? It's like, what would you go for? Naturally, as humans, I'd go for a deer out here in Virginia. I mean, I'm not getting any berries anywhere that I can eat, but deer are plentiful here, and I would be eating that thing nose to tail. What is unnatural about that? That's to me, we talk about this natural nature, hippies are very connected to that. And I have never in my life felt connected the way I do to myself on a carnivore, on an animal-based diet than I did when I was eating veggies. Not only did I not feel connected to myself, I shouldn't say veggies, but when I was eating, yes, veggies definitely for my body were causing so much havoc, more so fruits than veggies. The fruits were causing, I couldn't even stand up when I ate an apple. Were causing, so I wasn't connected. I was completely blocked off from being able to access my brain, access my world, have relationships. Today, everything in my life feels connected. I have ability to access my tools because I'm not being blocked off from any type of pains. And to me, being connected and grounded, it's like what hippies are trying to do. And of course, now I can bring peace. I can share my story. I can not just bring peace here, but also help to provide peace in the world, right? And so, carnivore hippie, breaking the molds here.
I love it. I love it. It caught my attention. It really did. The only thing I was missing was like the rainbow colors in your logo. You brought up fruit being a problem for you, and it seems that fruit and honey has become the new kid on the block in the carnivore world. What do you think about the introduction of these supposedly non-carnivore foods? I mean, I've eaten carnivore for about 3.5 years. Started off a little more high-fat carnivore, but I've swerved over into mostly kind of traditional carnivore. Just get the natural fats that come with the proteins that you consume. But it seems to me that some very influential voices are saying, hey, add in fruit. Hey, add in honey. What do you think about that? Is that sending a good message to people?
Honestly, for me, because of my colitis, those things I know don't work for me.
Yeah.
Also, honey is something that I used to drink in excess. Like I would drink it. It was like part of my sugar addiction. So
Yeah.
in my experience, I feel that if it works for people, like when I think about, the world or outside, like if we find berries in nature and we're eating them, then that's one thing. So I don't really have a problem with that. It's like, if it works for you, hey, by all means. It doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
Because it literally causes digestive.
And look, that's my problem. Is it's one thing to say, oh, look, I added fruit. Look, I added honey. You should try it too, without giving people the parameters of, if you try this, here's what you need to do to quantify if it's right for you. Wear a CGM on your arm. Look at your weight, make sure you're not bloated, like all of these things. And maybe some of these people promoting that are doing those things. But to me, I just hear in the zeitgeist of the community of, oh, everybody's adding in fruit and honey now to their carnivore diet. Who doesn't want honey glazed, ham and blah, 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 with a little blueberries on top, or pineapple on top, who knows? But it just seems it could send a bad message if people aren't getting that clarification.
Yeah, I think also it comes down to, for me, like I ended up here with a lot of trial and error, and I feel like that if you know that there are certain fruits and veggies that can cause bloating and inflammation for you, then to eliminate those. And I mean, look, if I didn't have those problems with fruit and veggies, or I didn't have a problem with honey, I think that I would probably be open to trying it. I don't know, but I have a severe problem with, I tried a few, last year when we were going through the whole 2020, I remember doing where I did no fruits. Like wasn't really eating fruits anyway. Sometimes I had berries. I then ate that week on a Sunday. I said, I'm going to do a little bit more carbs. And I ate a little bowl of blueberries. After I ate those blueberries, I did not feel okay.
Yeah.
And I know people that can eat a small bowl of blueberries with their carnivore meals, and that, once in a while, and be totally fine with that. So it really is people's, I think, their own experience with it. And I do think that, it'd be good to kind of preface, if you have any sort of like gut issues, IBS, things like that, then just be aware that these things might cause a flare-up, especially with these pesticides.
Have you experienced the dreaded keto flu? Did you know that most of these symptoms are actually due to your body dumping excess electrolytes? This is where Element comes in. Element is a tasty electrolyte drink mix with everything you need and nothing you don't. That means lots of salt with no sugar. Element is formulated to help anyone with their electrolyte needs and is perfectly suited to folks following a keto, low-carb, or paleo diet. Element contains a science-backed electrolyte ratio, 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium, with none of the junk, no sugar, no coloring, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, No BS. Everyone needs electrolytes, especially those on low-carb diets, or if you practice intermittent or extended fasting, if you're physically active, or sweat a lot. Add Element today and see how much better you feel and perform. Use the URL drinklmnt.com/Jimmy.
Yeah, and I think the overall message is check in with yourself. I think we're very apt to say, well, XYZ carnivore leader says blankety blank, so therefore I'll do it, and you don't check in with yourself. And you start to feel bad, but you're like, but XYZ carnivore leader says it's okay, so I'm going to keep eating it even though I don't feel good. And so that's kind of the danger. So for all of you watching and listening, if that's you and you've tried something you've heard is supposed to be good and it's not working for you, that is your sign to exit stage left. Like, you don't have to keep doing that very thing.
Or like you said too, Jimmy, you can go get some blood work done, or easily you can go buy the glucose monitors, whatever you need to do that's going to help you see if there's any type of inflammation in your body from it. But my biggest thing is, if I am not feeling okay, the check-in with myself is really, really important. That bloating is my first sign. The bloating is my first sign. And most fruits and vegetables, most of them cause a lot of bloating for me. And so bloat is a very good sign, a good like indicator for people when they're checking in with themselves. If you're feeling bloated, think about, is this food serving me?
Yeah. So Sweta, earlier you mentioned you had 2 eating disorders, and was binge eating one of them?
Yep.
And
yep.
What was the...
So I actually had all of them.
Oh, okay.
I had bulimia for a short period of time. I had exercise bulimia, which is where I would eat like
Yes.
you wouldn't believe. And then I would go to the gym.
Right.
And a couple of other things I would do is I would drink a little bit before I went to the gym so I wouldn't know what was going on. I could stay there for hours. So I would stay there, like, you know, at the 24-hour gym. I remember I would stay there for hours. So there was that. And then I also, in high school, I had anorexia for a little while there, like a few months. But yeah, so those are the 3 things that, and I've recovered from all of those as well.
What would you say was the biggest reason you recovered?
For me,
Yes.
biggest reason was I wanted to live. I wanted to live. I was dying, and it was like I had 3 options. One was like, and obviously I say 3 options because I was drinking at this time in my life. So it was either jails, that was probably in my future if I kept going, institutions, or death. Like, I feel like those are the places where I would have ended up. And so I hit a really low bottom in 2007, and my whole entire life changed from that moment. Pain got me there.
And you became self-aware. That is a huge part of this as well, that when you don't know you have a problem, you can't really deal with the problem because you don't know you have a problem. So
Yeah.
Once you're self-aware, once you realized you had the problem, then you could do something about it.
Absolutely. So the self-awareness was obviously the first thing that came. And that self-awareness, the little seed that was dropped, happened that time when I told you in high school. My parents kind of stopped, and I was like, maybe I'm doing something here that's really not okay. And then it started from there. I was able to start to say, okay, yeah. And it was the pain that got me the self-awareness. Like, it wasn't until I hit a bottom, oh my God, I'm in so much pain, we have a problem.
Isn't it a shame we have to hit that bottom before we recognize the self-destructive behavior? And that bottom is going to look different from person to person. Some people see one little hint of different and they go, oh, nope, gotta check it, nope, gotta get that. And then others have to go all the way down. And then finally they're flat on their face, mud, and it's raining on them. And they're like, I guess I should try to do something about this. You know, at that point, it's so obvious.
Yeah.
So,
So it's, You know, today when I look back, it's like, it's also, you have an opportunity in that moment for incredible, like a miracle, right? It's an opportunity where we really get a chance to change. And today I just look at any type of little bottoms that I hit. I tell people all the time, you don't have to keep digging. You can stay here. Like you don't have to, but some people need to keep digging, you know, and that's what's going to help them get to the realization to change. And I feel like too, if I hadn't hit that low, like the lower the bottom, the more joy I feel on the other side once
Yeah.
I get. It's like that yin yang, right? I don't, we can't have happiness without knowing sadness, right? So like if you have been through some really tough shit, like, and you come out of that, the joy and the magnitude of that joy, it's just incredible. It's
Yeah.
incredible. And it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it.
I have heard. So you also overcame PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. What instituted that, and then how did you overcome that?
So I think just like little things for me, what I learned about PTSD is I used to think that it would have to be this insane traumatic experience. Just little traumas can build up PTSD. And so I think just over the course of my life, I started building up these ideas that I believed. And so, you know, that something was happening to me that that basically the end all be all is I was just going to die. Like I was just gonna die. And it would like I would go to this place and I would have a complete panic attack. And it got pretty bad for me after I had my second child. I had postpartum, and this was 2017 where a lot of things changed for me. I started cognitive behavioral therapy,
Yeah.
and that helped so much
Yeah.
in changing these neural pathways because today I have so many tools, and because I'm cleared, I'm not under the influence of the food or like having to deal with the colitis or the way that foods made me feel. I can clearly see when if anxiety pops up or I'm starting to feel a little anxious, I know what to do immediately so I can bring that down and come back into the present moment and come back into my life. And it works. It really, truly works. But I do think food played a huge role in my aggravating my PTSD because if I was eating, I remember during my pregnancy, um, I was pretty much low carb, but I allowed myself to have like pancakes a couple of times. And I just remember eating those and then just like the depression would come in so intense. And now when I look back on my life, I can actually see based on what I was eating and the panic attack, eating and it was like aggravating it.
Yes. Remember earlier when I mentioned that healthy eating is like a drug, bad eating is the disease. It
Yeah.
really is. By the way,
And then,
she.
uh-huh. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So also going back to the gut brain connection, right? Like this is a really great example of my labs, my GIs, my GI doctors, my all of these colonoscopies, these things that are coming back are showing that I've healed my gut. And so as a result of the food that's going in, it's also triggering the brain. And then also the thoughts that are coming in can create, so, you know, I talk about this holistic approach of healing the mind, healing the body, healing the emotions. The three things for me is how I ended up here where I am now.
Yes. By the way, earlier you mentioned cognitive behavioral therapy. Guys, go look up CBT. It's a very popular thing in the psychological, psychiatric world, therapy world that helps you kind of deal with some of life's stuff, to put it mildly. So really good stuff. Well, Sweta, you are an inspiration. You can be as hippy dippy as you want to be, my dear, because you're changing people's lives. Yeah. You're changing people's lives with your energy and your story. keep sharing. Any dreams that you have now moving forward? Are you wanting to share some of your journey in other ways, either like a podcast or book or anything like that? Or are you content with being the carnivore hippie on Instagram? Which, by the way, if you just started a few months ago, you're almost at 3,000 followers. That's a huge jump.
I was not, I started this on a whim and it was a secret. I didn't tell anybody. I said, I'm going to create this account. I'm just going to use hashtags. Nobody needs to follow me, but I'll just put everything out there. And then I got 20 followers, and then I got 30 followers, and still I hadn't told anyone in my family what I was doing. It wasn't until you reached out to me where I was like, oh crap. I told my husband and I told my kids, everybody needs to come upstairs before dinner and sit down on the couch. Mommy's doing something new. And I told them that I was going to be here on your podcast, and we had them, you had reached out to me. And I think that was the beginning of me realizing that I could help people with my story. And, kind of like the way that my life has unfolded, I had no idea I was going to get here. I'm a very much sort of, I go with the role, with the flow and what I feel. And so I know that I started a YouTube account. I am all in wherever this journey is going to take me. I really have no clue, but my ultimate dream has always been to be able to be useful and help people. And now that I have this, doing this takes my darkest past and turns it into my greatest asset because I get to help people. So wherever it takes me, I have dreams of helping more people.
Well, you're doing that already. That's the beautiful thing. And guys, yes, go check her out over on YouTube. Is it The Carnivore Hippie, and you'll find the videos?
Yeah. I just started that account, and I was an actress, and I did all the things in LA for 10 years. So I have a lot of film experience and a lot of acting experience. And so being able to marry the two passions together has been such a delight.
And you talk pretty good too. So. Well, guys, go check her out, The Carnivore Hippie, on Instagram. And Sweta, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you so much. This is such an honor to be here. I can't even tell you. This is a huge highlight for me.
Get inspiration from the Living La Vida Low Carb Show. Hey, the livinglowcarbshow.com. Woo!
Having a hard time reaching my goal weight.
Just use Keto Chow, the magical meal replacement that makes keto easy. Prep takes seconds. Just add the fat you want, Keto Chow, water, and shake. And before you know it, you'll be getting rid of the fat you don't want.
I did it.
I can't believe you're finally here. Oh, I thought you'd be taller.
I know, and I'm wearing heels.
Grab yours today at jimmylovesketochow.com.